Good morning, Stephanie. Thank you so much for coming on Messaging to Magic with me. We are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube right now. So you said it's cold in New York this morning. I can relate, but what did you say the temperatures were?
It is 40 right now. We had like a real frost this morning, which just destroyed fall, but it's all right.
It's been freezing and like flurrying last couple of days here, but then it melts, and so it's still like really pretty. But
That's nice.
yeah, it is nice, but it's also like really nice when it's 60 or 70 degrees. And
agreed.
Yeah. So we can talk literally. Oh, she went away. She'll come back. We will be here to talk about Steph, and there she is back again.
So strange.
And I've never had that happen before.
So strange.
Hello. So we're going to talk about you and all things like kind of your journey from dental marketing to freelancer after COVID and all the things. But really, it sounds like you love to show people what's possible and what it has allowed you to do. So dental marketing, how'd you get into dental marketing?
So, I mean, I've always been in marketing, and then I was home with my daughter until she was 18 months old. And I wanted to work locally, which I thought was impossible because I'm in New York. So usually all the marketing jobs are in the city. And I did not want to go there anymore. And there was a local dental practice, a big one, that had an opening for director of marketing. And I was like, all right. And a friend of mine worked there. So I applied and I got it. And it was nice because I was allowed to do like anything and everything. And it really just taught me so much. And I learned a lot about dental.
Awesome. And it's funny, I've talked to several people who are in dental marketing lately, which I didn't realize was such I don't want to say burgeoning field, but it's like there's a lot of marketing jobs within that industry, which I didn't know about. And so let's talk about what happened next. So 2019 hits, 2020 hits, and something changed in the world, but
so
in New York.
Right before COVID, I started freelancing just like a little bit because I was working at a restaurant to pay for daycare because it's so expensive. And I did not want to do that anymore. So a friend of mine had a friend who needed help with holiday articles for Huffington Post. So I was like, cool, they pay $150 an article. That's so cool. So I did that. And then I was like, oh, I can make a little money. So I started just like doing little things here and there. And then our wonderful friend, COVID hit, and then I didn't have a job anymore. So it was like, all right, well, what do I do now? So then I just like went full in, like, well, I've got nothing else to do. So I started freelancing full time.
So what, I mean, I remember too, like the first time I made $150 for a blog post, I was like, no way. Like it was mind blowing after coming from working as an employee where I might have had to do like 10 of those in a day if we were doing them. And I certainly didn't get paid at a rate of 150 each. So what has that looked like for you? What did going full time look like for you?
So in the beginning, I had no idea what I was doing, obviously. So I took some courses and learned how to cold pitch and network and do all those kinds of things. I had no idea what I wanted to write or who I wanted to write for. So a lot of it in the beginning was like reactive content for companies that didn't know how to respond to COVID, what to say, what their messaging should be. So that was actually like fun because we were figuring it out together, but it was a lot of cold pitching and learning.
A lot of cold pitching. And cold pitching is something that like strikes fear into a lot of people. Personally, like I have networked into almost all of the things that I've done. There's been some level of personal connection. So I have not had to do much cold pitching. And the thought of it is terrifying to me, but you have had a lot of success. And I don't want to say terrifying, but like I think overwhelming is more the right word. So what does that look like for you? What's the anatomy of a cold pitch, and how do you find your people?
So what I learned was it's all about making it personal. Like don't ever send a mass cold pitch. Like it's the most impersonal thing you can do. So doing your research, even if you don't know like what company you want to write for to begin with, you start just thinking about like what you've done. So like in the beginning, I did like e-commerce and those kinds of things. So I looked for more companies like that and saw if they were, the first thing I did was go to their website and see if they even had a blog. If they didn't have a blog, I probably wasn't pitching to them because I wasn't like ready to be like, here's a whole content strategy. But if they did have a blog,
one that is.
What was that?
If they did not have one.
Right, if they did not have one. And then if they did, but looked like they weren't updating it very often, I felt that was like the prime time to be like, okay, they obviously need help because they should be posting more, or they used to post a lot and then kind of slowed down. And so I would read through blogs and like get an idea of what they wrote about, what they might need help with, and then wrote an email, no more than like 3 lines, 2 paragraphs in each, and just gave like a personal touch, like I really enjoyed this, here are some ideas, let me know if you want to connect, kind of thing. And then I was persistent, which I continue to be, and followed up because like, I know your email inbox gets flooded, you forget to answer an email, you don't realize how many days have gone by. So just a quick follow-up to get it right back to the top usually always helps.
I don't know. I have personal feelings on follow-ups. There was one, and it wasn't a cold pitch, which is why I say this. It was like a warm introduction, but it still kind of fell off the radar of the CEO who was in charge of hiring at that point. And I think I followed up like 7 times. And it wasn't like 7 days in a row by any means. And it wasn't even 7 weeks in a row, but it was, one time it was like 3 days. Hey, just checking in. Then it was another week. Then it was another week. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to sit in this for like a month. There's something going on. But it kept that cycle going. And every time she'd respond, be like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll be back to you in a little bit. And ultimately, it turned into a really good gig for me because I was able to step in and help. And I share that example because I'm asking you, now that I've gotten totally sidetracked, what does a follow-up strategy look like for you? You said persistence pays off.
Yeah.
And I agree.
I would give it like a week the first time, then maybe another week. I also track my email opens so I can see if they even opened it. And if they did, then it's a more reason to be like, hey, I don't say like, hey, I saw you, right? You opened my email. Right. But if they didn't even open it, then it's more like, do I have the right email address? Am I reaching out to the right person? Should I try to find someone else? And then I follow up like 3 times. And then I put it in a little folder in my email. It's like potential to follow up. And then like once a month, I'll go visit it. And sometimes people just respond back and say, okay, nothing right now, but like, please follow up with me. Like they're asking you, like, please remind me. I'm not going to remember. And then some people don't answer, and that's okay.
Well, I love that Google has this snooze function too, where you can now snooze an email. And if they say to follow up, you like, okay. And then Gmail in itself will remind you. They'll say,
yeah,
you snooze this for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Lightsaber.
Yeah. But you just touched on something that I think is really interesting. And I think it's really challenging for a lot of people. So you find the company, you realize that they could probably benefit from your help, but one thing is missing, and that is who to contact. So how do you find this person?
LinkedIn. So usually it's like a content manager, head of content, editorial director, those kinds of titles. And LinkedIn makes it really easy to search by titles. And then you can use like a Hunter extension, like hunter.io, lets you look up people's email addresses, like per the company, and it'll give you like a 80% possibility that this is the right email address. Because most of the time it's like first name, last name, company name, like some form of that. And then I see if they're even active. Like if they're active on LinkedIn, then maybe I'll message them on LinkedIn instead because I have the premium account. So you can just direct message people.
Yeah, I love that. And so what does a cold pitching, I'm trying to think, like what's your approach to pitching? Like how frequently do you do it? How many pitches do you send out at a time if you're in a pitching cycle?
So I don't pitch anymore just because I don't need to right now. But I did in the beginning, like 25 a week.
So you spent a lot of time going into this to do
Yep.
the research, to make it personal.
Yep.
Would you say that was like your job at the time? That was what you considered?
Yeah. Excel spreadsheets galore. Yep.
I had a Trello board at one point of keeping track of all the people I'd talked to. And I should have kept that up because I'm like, I'll remember everything about this person. And then I don't. Shocking that I can't hack my brain like that. But the other thing, so it's really interesting to me is your perception of success and how that has changed over the last 2.5 years now. So what does that look like for you? And like, what has it allowed you to do? There's so many questions, but I'm just like giving you all these like little nuggets that like might resonate that you can jump off of.
No problem. So when I first started, my definition of success was to make $30,000, which was like, so much extra money. Then I way surpassed that the first year. So then I was like, well, how much am I supposed to grow? Which is still like, there is no answer. There's no like, I should be growing 25% year over year. So I grew my second year, and then this year hit, and that's when I joined Think Tank. And because I was like, I don't know what growth means anymore. Like, how much more money do I need to make? That's not success anymore. And it didn't even feel like success. Like, I would hit a milestone and be like, okay, like, now what? It didn't really change my perception of like how I felt about my business. It became much more about a few different things, like freedom. Like, I have a 5-year-old daughter, so being able to work within her school hours and like still be able to be on the PTA and be a Girl Scout troop leader and all these things I never thought I would do. And then also working with clients like that I actually enjoy instead of just doing it for the money, because the money gets old. Like, I know that's such a like brat thing to say, unless you already are making the money, but I'm telling everybody, like, once you make the money, that's not all you need. You need way more. Just like you hear all the time, like, rich people are not any happier. They have their own problems. Like, so it doesn't matter how much money you make. It's what you do with the freedom it gives you, the time it gives you, and like the feeling it gives you.
Well, and I think, your bills rise too.
Yeah. You get really used to like how much you make, so then you just spend more.
I think when I first started, and I was slower to take off because I didn't really have a vision for what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm going to open my own business and do my own thing, but I don't really know what. And so it took me a solid couple of months to figure out what that thing was. And I made reasonable money that first year, but it was not, I would say we were still living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of how tight we were and what we stretched. And granted, like, things cost a little bit more today than they did 3 years ago. So I don't think we would have been able to survive that way. But yeah, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I look at my Amazon bill and it's like, yeah, maybe I don't need all that stuff.
Oh, yes. It's so true, though. My husband read me an article recently about a couple that made, I think it was like $250,000 total, which is a lot of money, no matter where you live. And they were still living paycheck to paycheck because their mortgage was really big. They both had high car payments and they had student loans. So, like, just because they make money, they're just spending more.
Right. Well, we both had to buy new cars in the last 2 years, which would have been devastating to us a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But and when you talk about freedom, I agree. Like, I have 2 kids who one is 5. We were talking about that earlier, but it's really, really interesting. Like, I would have not been able to buy the car that I bought. I would have ended up with something with like probably a bicycle. Have the Flintstone mobile. It's hard by itself. So that's one form of the freedom. But I agree. Like, I take off usually about one morning or afternoon a week to go be with the kids in their school. Or if there's not like a PTA thing, if there's not like a volunteer opportunity, then I go have breakfast with someone. That's not happening this week because I did that a little too much in earlier this month. So I'm playing catch up and paying the piper. But it is. I think you're spot on there. It's not about the money once you have it. And it does. I know exactly what you mean. It's about having that time. Because I think back to when my daughter was a baby or my son was a baby and I was home all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of rambling now. But so to kind of tie it back to what you were talking about, um, you you said that you thought that there was no way it would ever be you that was living the life on your terms. Why was that, and how has that changed? And what do you think that means for everyone else?
So I feel like whenever you see someone who's successful, you're like, oh, they had to know someone, they got so lucky. There's like always that belief that like that can't be me because it obviously happened for them for a reason. I was the same way. I was so skeptical. I was like, there's no way. Then I started doing it, and I am no different than anyone else. I didn't like know anyone in any business. I didn't have any connections, nothing. I was just Steph, just random person. And I did it, and literally anyone can do it. Erin and I are both part of a mastermind, and there's all different kinds of people in there, and everyone has found their own success in their own niche, doing their own thing with copy, and literally anyone can do it now more than ever because everyone's remote for the most part.
All you need is a computer and an internet connection.
Literally, that's all
like
you need.
a basic innate ability to communicate. You can learn the skills that you need to, but yeah, if I will say that there are people who may or may not be cut out to be writers, but there are other things you can do remotely.
Yeah, if you love organization, like you could be a project manager, an OBM. Like there's so many different avenues that you might not even realize you can take from a digital perspective and help people like us. Like we need people to help us, and it's such a learning curve. Like I didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. I've learned, but the invoicing and the bookkeeping and all this different stuff that plays into having your own business is about so much more than the writing itself.
It really is. So what, yeah, and I think what's particularly interesting is you go into these groups with people who say, I'm not sure I have any business being in this room. And it's always really interesting to be like, no, like really all roads do lead to this point. And I always make it a point to show like the 14 different things I've done that look like there's no way that could possibly tie into this.
Mm-hmm.
But what would you tell someone who is either on the verge of burnout in the corporate world or who is just feels like they're going through the motions or is terrified, which is probably very timely, about the possibility of layoffs? What would you tell them about the idea of starting in this?
I would say if you have the opportunity to do it, don't quit your job. Don't just like quit your job and be like, screw it, I'm going to be a freelancer. Because the anxiety that comes with not having steady income is scary and like will make you do crazy things and you won't start the way you should. So give yourself, if like to say you start today and you're like, you know what, I really would like to start researching, start asking one of us, like start looking into all the things you need before you even begin so that you set yourself up for success. And then see if you even like it. If you like, I just like to write. I didn't ever think like I would be a writer like this. Like I don't want to write a book, but I have always liked to write. It just came naturally. So if that's someone like if you're someone like that, then take those skills and go try one article or, one social media post or whatever and see if you even like it. And then from there, take your little, like whatever you like say you really like making Kanban boards and all these like organizational things. Start playing around with those project management tools and see if like that's more your style. Like if you like the putting all the pieces together, but not doing the actual pieces. There's all these different avenues you could take. And a lot of people have these skills that they don't realize because it's just part of their everyday jobs that they're doing. So if you actually pull them out and think about everything you do, it's like, oh, I could actually do that and I could do that. But making that list of everything you're good at and also everything you don't like in your current job so that you don't automatically go for that again because it's comfortable.
And I think that fear of the unknown is scary. I mean, it's a fear, so it's inherently scary. But I think that prevents a lot of people from doing the thing, whatever the thing is. But what would you say if they have this fear?
Swallow it. get rid of it. Like, talk it out. Like, it's always going to be there. It's still there. Like, it's been how many years now, and it's still there because there's always the possibility of, like, you know, your client leaving, you losing your job, anything, the business going out of business, anything like that. But that shouldn't stop you, because there's always going to be a what if in life. What if COVID happens again? What if this? Like, you never could have planned for that. So you can't plan for fear, because you don't know if and when it will ever strike. So just do it. Like, the worst thing that will ever happen is you look back and you learn from it. But that's why you don't quit your job.
So what does your business look like today? How is it structured?
It is not dental. It is B2B. I'll still do dental just because I know it. B2B, SaaS, tech, a lot of long form content, website copy, and focusing more on like clients who are making life easier for other businesses. Like, so technology that like will help you text your customers, or measure the space of your workplace and things like that, that really improve your workplace and your company.
So technology that helps move your company into the digital world, even if you're a remote company and there's a lot of like repetitive, what is that word? Repetitive. Just over here, like inventing new words for the English language, but things that automate repetitive tasks and kind of take on that role.
Mm-hmm.
And do you, at this point, I know at different points you've had a team of people that you work with. Who's on your team today?
I work with like a few freelance writers and an editor, but that's about it. I don't ever want to be responsible for someone else's sole income, so I don't ever want employees. Like, I can't live with that pressure. So I'd rather it just be on me.
I can appreciate that. And so you work with a variety of clients, you work with a variety of writers. What do you see that change? How do you see that changing as your daughter gets older? Or as do you have a big picture goal in mind that you're looking for?
I really don't. I have a little like CEO retreat planned for later this year to plan out 2023 in a more balanced way, because I learned this year that that constant like take time off, but then play catch up and prepare before. And like, that's not a good feeling. It was nice to take time off, but then making up for it is not helpful. So I need to do a better job at planning. So I think my big goal is to balance life and work without feeling constant stress. Like, there will always be some stress.
There's always some stress, and there, like, you can't plan for it. It's always the weird stuff that you're like, how on earth would I have ever known about that? Mm-hmm. How on earth could that have been on my radar? Like COVID.
Exactly.
Who knew that the world was going to fall apart? Which is ironically when my business took off. I had finally gotten like all my processes and things together, and then all of a sudden, all of these people realize that every business is online. Is an online business today. It doesn't matter whether you sell food or not, or you sell writing services. But and they're like, my website was built in 1982. Well, not really, but 2005, and it still looks the same as it did then. We have a problem. We do. So, well, awesome. Thanks so much for coming on. If people want to chat with you, what's the best way to reach you?
LinkedIn, definitely. I am an open book. Please ask me questions, reach out, connect. I'm here.
Fantastic. And that is, if you are live on LinkedIn, you can see her profile. Well, if you're live on any of these platforms, you can see Steph's LinkedIn URL right there, and you can go connect with her. Also, your website is in there as well. So yes. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
This has been really fun.
Yeah.
I always like hanging out with you.